So I've asked Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, 14th Congressional District here in Pennsylvania, to join us today for a number of reasons. Guy, how are you?
Rose, thanks for having me on. Doing well. And, hey, I got to back you up just on another point. The caller that you just had on talking about the PACT Act was wrong. You were right in the sense of mandatory spending. If I can just clarify the record.
Thank you.
You were correct in that back and forth.
Well, thank you for that. And listen, I understand. Look, this is the Republicans want to help our veterans. I wish sometimes that we could just pass something that's clearly that there's not other things mixed in with it, that, we're very to the point on what we're going to do for veterans and to help them. Why can't we just do that sometimes, Guy? I don't understand.
Well, it's because Democrats will never miss an opportunity to cram in extra spending or to play political games. You see this with, for example, first responder legislation. Anytime there's a natural disaster, because they know if Republicans vote no, they'll get beat up in the media. But the real problem here wasn't the underlying issue. Look, I'm an Iraq War veteran. A lot of my friends have issues from the burn pits and other things that were going on. They should be compensated and taken care of.
Absolutely.
The issue was it should be discretionary spending, meaning the Appropriations Committee, which I'm on, should vote for it every year. Because we moved it into mandatory spending, we totally lost control of that money. It's very hard now for Congress to monitor it. But the Democrats like these mandatory spending bills because it's kind of like a set and forget it with the appropriations process. That's not how I like to do business. I think that we should evaluate every appropriations bill every year to make sure we're fighting back on waste, fraud, abuse,
Absolutely.
and shifting resources where they need to be shifted. But you were absolutely correct that it is mandatory spending.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Now I know that you've been to China. You've specifically. I want to talk about Taiwan.
Well,
you've been to Taiwan.
Yeah, and I've been to China and I've been to Taiwan.
Yes, and you, as a member of Congress, can travel to Taiwan if that's what you choose to do. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. And I can tell you there's a lot of benefit. I was actually in Hong Kong as well. There's a lot of benefit because you can, first off, you're having very high level discussions. You're meeting with heads of state, high ranking government officials. And so remember, I was on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I'm on state and foreign operations right now. So you're conducting business. So it's very important that we as members of Congress can go overseas and meet with foreign dignitaries and conduct business. China, and rarely do you hear me supporting the speaker, but she was right not to back down to China and frankly, the White House and the Pentagon, because Biden at the White House and Kirby at the Pentagon were criticizing the speaker on her decision to make this trip. Making the trip was the right thing because we need to end what's called the strategic ambiguity around Taiwan.
That's right.
We also need to end the one China policy. We should recognize Taiwan, the ROC, Republic of China, as a free and independent nation as it is. Remember, it's a democracy. And we should say that we will unequivocally defend Taiwan if it is invaded by China. And we should bring the Japanese, perhaps the Philippines, the Indians, the Australians, all in on that, perhaps even the Vietnamese, to make sure that China knows that there's something like a Pacific version of NATO and we will contain China. But if we let communist China take Taiwan, they can really threaten us. What's next? Guam, Hawaii. It's all about them wanting to project power in the Pacific. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. And of course, we need to support a sister democracy in Taiwan.
It's interesting because you bring up policy. Kirby just said, I think it was yesterday, that we haven't changed our position on the policy in terms of independence. But he has to say that, I understand, right? Although he also said, what's all the drama? What do you mean, what's all the drama? China just threatened to kill Nancy Pelosi. That's pretty dramatic.
Exactly. It's the kowtowing that's coming from Kirby. Internally, I call him the Baghdad Bob of the Pentagon.
Interesting.
I mean, he's absolutely laughable. He's been so wrong so many times. But he is right that we still have the one China policy. Thank you, Richard Nixon. Just another mistake that Nixon made.
Yeah.
What we really should do is we should end the one China policy. Because how did that work out for Hong Kong? Remember, it's supposed to be one country, two systems, and now it's one country under a communist dictatorship, and Hong Kong's freedom has been completely obliterated, and to a large extent because we in the West failed to enforce international agreements to keep Hong Kong free and independent. We can't make that mistake with Taiwan. The stakes are too high. Remember, Taiwan, I'm a former naval officer, from a naval point of view, Taiwan is like an unsinkable aircraft carrier that's sitting right there in the first island chain of the Pacific.
Yes.
That's why it was so fought over during World War II, where the Japanese came in World War II, rather. They had it before World War II began. But it's why it was so important to the Japanese, for example. Also, the claim that the communist China has over Taiwan is completely, it's very weak. That island, Formosa, was a colony of the Japanese. Before then, it was a colony of the Dutch. There's a native population that has very little in common with the Han Chinese, which is the majority ethnic group in China. They're actually much more similar. The native Taiwanese are much more similar to actually the Polynesians that went out into the South Pacific, into Hawaii, etc. So this claim of territory over Taiwan is ludicrous. And the international community should push back and call it out as such, and of course recognize Taiwan and say that we will defend Taiwan if it's invaded.
Thank you for that information. And I've got like 4 minutes and 2 questions. So here's number 1.
Okay.
Should the president have said that the military advises against this trip? Something to that effect. And then later, of course, Biden said, no, I didn't say that. But I mean, wasn't that putting us in a precarious position, quite frankly?
It was putting the speaker in a precarious situation. When you're going on these international trips, one of the things that protects you is the fact that you have the full force of the United States behind you. It's what keeps you safe when you're in when you're in bad areas of the world. The fact that you have the president undermining the Speaker of the House and by extension all members of Congress shows weakness and vacillation. He should not have said it, and neither should the Pentagon have said it either. Strategic
ambiguity. Have we seen that before in this administration?
Well, you saw it with Ukraine.
That's what I thought.
Saw it when he said that. Yep. Yeah, remember when he said, quote unquote, minor incursion will be okay. That was very ambiguous. Deterrence doesn't work with strategic ambiguity. Deterrence works when you have very clear red lines, and your enemies and adversaries know that you'll enforce those red lines. We saw President Trump enforcing red lines. We saw the Bush administration enforcing red lines. The Obama administration did not. We had chaos in the Middle East, the rise of ISIS. We had Biden neglect red lines, and we saw what's happening with a land war we now have in Europe. God forbid we lose our clarity on Taiwan and continue this path of strategic ambiguity, because the issues we're facing with Europe will be 10 times as worse when the Chinese move to take Taiwan.
Yeah, exactly. Real quick, did this trip have to happen right now? Did it have to be Nancy Pelosi? I mean, look, I don't want anything to happen to her. I ask my audience to please pray for her safety. But in the end, I mean, will she show the strength that's necessary on this visit? I think just being there is showing strength, I actually, in the light of the threats that she received.
I give credit to the speaker for not backing down. That's commendable. I give her credit for going to Taiwan. Remember, the speaker was a big China hawk. She was very big into the Free Tibet movement, which was correct. We should have been doing more to make sure the Tibet state free and independent, and it is now not. But so I'll give credit to the speaker. But the real villains here are the people in the government that are kowtowing to the communist Chinese, such as Kirby and Biden.
Okay. Yeah, this is interesting. I do commend her on going through with the visit to Taiwan. I pray for her safety, and thank you for clarifying a lot of these things that I needed clarified. So thank you, Congressman Guy Reschenthaler, always for joining us. I appreciate the work you're doing.
Thank you. Take care.